Hello everyone and welcome to Makai-World Reviews. I am the Tony Makai, master of minds and of men. After dogs, we move over to man acting like dogs, the worst kind of dogs that is, as we slip away from the comedy mockumentaries into something a little more serious. Today we'll be looking at Man Bites Dog. So let's hide those bodies and kill the postman too and get into it. That movie again is Man Bites Dog, another film that is directed, written, and acted by some of the same people, those being Rémy Belvaux, I don't know. He passed away in 2006 by his own hand, was mostly well known for this movie and throwing a pie at Bill Gates. I wish I had more to say about the fella. And Andre Bonzel, once again only really known for this movie, though thankfully he appears to still be alive. And Benoit, not even going to attempt to say this last name. Someone I actually kind of know, though a lot more of as an actor than anything else. He has had a fairly sizable career in Belgium and French and their cinema, obviously, though I'd have to do some thinking if I could really recommend anything I've seen from him, save potentially this movie, but we'll find out at the end. Nothing else pops out as being all that memorable. Release date for this was January 15th, 1993, and what came out around the same time? Alive! Famous punchline of a movie about the Uruguayan rugby team that crashed in the Andes and had to eat some of their fellow dead teammates. Not a bad film, but it was kind of a mixed bag, and like I said, it's since become something of a punchline, at least was in the 90s. And The Hit List. I like Jeff Fahey, but boy, I don't think he's actually ever been in a good movie. And despite James Coburn, this plotting movie about a hitman with a heart of gold isn't it either. So what's this movie about? Well, we follow a camera crew led by director Rémy as they tail a man by the name of Benoit. Benoit is an interesting fella. He's close to his family, his mother and grandfather in particular, who run a small shop. He makes music with his girlfriend Valerie. He's a charming, eclectic individual who enjoys birds. And he's a serial killer. He has no issues killing postmen to steal their mail, pensioners for their money, families in their suburban homes, including children, midgets, and anyone else that seems fit too. He's also a racist, misogynistic, rapist bigot. He also enjoys drinking with the crew and waxing philosophically to them over a luxurious meal. Rémy and the crew slowly fall into Benoit's world, participating more and more in the depravity, even helping him during a shootout when their boom mic guy is killed. They also help bury bodies, and after a night of drinking, they break into a couple's homes, participate in a gang rape and murder. But it's when they encounter and murder another documentary crew who was following an Italian gangster around that the tide begins to turn. Benoit is injured in some boxing training, which causes him to make mistakes, and he is arrested, though quickly breaks out of jail soon after. But it's too late, as the Italians have killed and violated Benoit's girlfriend and his mother. In the end, Benoit and crew are all gunned down, seemingly by the Italians. Usually the Italians did it. So I'm going to be combining the directing and singing all together. So it was all done by pretty much these three guys in the film. This is a very low budget movie, only costing around 30 grand to make. But honestly, they did just about everything they could with the money and the premise. I am critical of how mockumentaries use their filming, but this is just about as perfect as you can get when it comes to that utilization, as it wasn't really part of the gimmick. It was just how they actually filmed the movie. Rémy held the camera. There was a mic guy and another guy with a light. They just followed Benoit around while he acted out the movie. They wrote it and they just acted it out. It wasn't just practical, it was clever. And I think the movie comes off as very authentic because it has to be. It's truly the case of necessity being the mother of innovation. This movie has a real grit, a real genuine flair to it that can't be replicated by a big budget movie trying to look like this. Not only that, but the special effects are superb for what they are. Gunshots, blood, murder, viscera all looked plausible, and for the amount of death that was in this movie, that was a must. That's a big concern going into a low-budget movie. How will the action look? And I was never disappointed in any of it. Frankly, especially in the scenes with the couple that is killed by Benoit and the crew, that low-budget aesthetic comes off as genuinely off-putting. The sets and lighting are what they are. These look to be real places they could film in. If it was dark out, there was a little bit of light from the crew. If it was light, it was light. It was exactly what it was, and that, again, gives it an authenticity that can't be faked. I'm impressed by the look and feel of this movie as far as directing and whatnot goes, and I would love to see more independent filmmakers try to capitalize on what they have to work with instead of overreaching their hand. I also want to ask, is this a mockumentary? or a found footage movie, because in the end they are killed, but we are seeing edited versions of all the footage they shot, or the movie would be hundreds of hours long, presumably. So someone had to find the camera, edit it, and release it in some capacity for us to have seen this footage, as an in-universe explanation anyways. I didn't really consider that until the end of the movie, but yeah, what do you folks think? Well, let's move over to the story. The concept is an interesting one. I like the idea that we follow the bad guy. Now, it's not wholly original, but nothing is, to be frank. It is compelling. We're forced to a situation where we have to endure this monster, and we learn quite truly that almost no one is a monster 24/7. I'll go into my feelings on the particular character of Belvaux shortly, but it's not hard to see why Rémy and the boys fall into this trap. It's easy to make friends with a person of dubious morality, and it's easy to get tangled in their web, to drink and bullshit, and just to fall down this path where you either stop completely or you go full bore into the craziness. When I was younger, I liked to test situations and see where they went, and it cultivated quite the harsh and ridiculous reality around me. So I can understand, at least partially, how easy it was to give into those base desires. The story really reminds me of a negative version of A Scanner Darkly. Just a bunch of friends falling into their own bullshit without any real way to get out of it. It's also a movie where the internal logic works. It's consistent in its storytelling, though not always with its pacing. And I think the editing is an issue, really, as there are a few scenes where it seems like there's a lot missing. We see these montages of murder a few times, and I wonder, were these scenes supposed to be part of a bigger portion of the movie? It's also this odd these odd boxing parts. We see Belvaux getting taped up for this boxing match, and then we meet a woman and her kid, and Belvaux had gotten her a job. It's like it's hinted that the kid is his, and he molests this woman in some capacity, but it doesn't go anywhere, and neither the kid nor the woman are ever seen again. Also, regarding the boxing, we see later Belvaux get beaten up in a boxing when he's sparring, and the trainer says, oh, he's not trained in a while. But just mere scenes ago, he was getting taped up to go what appeared to be a real boxing match. I don't understand what was going on with all of this. Also, the injury stuff from the boxing, he's like in a neck brace, but it goes away quickly. Like, as soon as he's arrested, he loses the neck brace. Also, the arrest, the trial, the escape from prison stuff was so rapid fire. It almost all could have been cut. Okay, he was captured, but how exactly? And then we get a lawyer talking, but then he just escapes from jail, and the end plays out. Why? How did he escape from jail? What was the point? It wasn't like it added any real tension, as he just goes to his girlfriend's and his mom's anyways. So it's not as if he's on the run. I didn't quite get that. There was just some issues with the layout of the plot that could have been more thoroughly defined. But once again, I think it came down to just sloppy editing from essentially newcomers to the movie world, the movie industry. Though besides that, it was a fairly narratively competent movie, though it was spliced in with this sense of 90s fatalist edgelord nonsense that's hard not to notice, especially nowadays. I don't think it was too annoying with that, because it was trying to present a story in a certain way, and I think had Belvaux not gotten killed in the end, I would have had a much bigger problem with the actions committed. At least we got an arc that ended with a positive, the death of the monster, you know? Now, I do have one huge complaint, and that's the sexual assault and murder of the couple scene. I don't care, for the most part, for sexual assault in movies or media, unless it's necessary and will be used importantly. I find most of the times it's gratuitous and overly sexualized. Well, here, it certainly isn't overly sexualized. In fact, due to the poor acting of the couple, it almost comes off as silly. But it was gratuitous. We could have easily been told about this scene, or just seen the gory aftermath and gotten the same idea. This scene, for me, was eye-rolling, and it's trying to be shocking. It was just a very poor choice to try to get actions across, in that horror and banality of all of it, and the crew going down a dark path. Moving over to characters, and really there are only two that are of any real note. Rémy, I recall watching this movie years and years ago and thinking we were going to get some kind of moral stance with Rémy. He was going to be the fence rider for a lot longer, and the voice of some kind of reason, but I think due to the fact that acting is not really all that good in the movie. It's serviceable, don't get me wrong, but Rémy in particular is kind of bad. That we didn't get him as a moral compass, as he goes from finding this subject interesting to his friends dying, the first boom mic guy, to really just being into it and involved and passionate about the murder. He goes from director to subordinate and accomplice pretty quickly. I do enjoy that he becomes part of the film. We see the group drinking and having a good time, and then we get to them actually committing acts. The two scenes I can see people having the hardest time with, myself included, is when they hold a kid down so Belvaux can suffocate him, and the gang rape and murder of the couple, which I've already expressed my feelings about that earlier. But I think the kids scene is important to see how involved Rémy and the group can and will be going forward, and how far they will go for this movie, for this man. I think the time we see the best of him, Rémy, acting-wise, is when they encounter the other documentary crew, and he's just so hyped up to kill them. Like, this is our turf. He was genuinely mad that someone else was filming, around them. Rémy, the man who plays Rémy, his name is also Rémy, I mentioned, took his life in 2006, and I'm deeply sorry to hear that. To Benoit, after I've done some complaining about the acting, I have to say, sans the aesthetics of this film, Benoit's acting carries the movie. He comes off as a real person of sorts, as exactly the kind of character he's supposed to be. He's charming, witty, thoughtful, and intelligent. He's good with his family and girlfriend. He's tempered in his own right, picky, you might even say. He's also a soulless, heartless psychopath, a total and complete monster. Now, we thankfully don't get into his backstory. Oh, why is he a monster? And I'm glad, because it presents him as just being this thing, this insufferable cunt, He shows just about every single bad human trait possible. He's nihilistic. In any new way he can make people suffer or be uncomfortable, he will at least attempt. We see him kill lots of people, upwards of 50 if you count the montages, and it's mostly just people he can take advantage of, old people, women. Says he doesn't care for killing kids, but he does it. He mentions killing midgets, for God's sake. He's openly racist, wanting to look at a dead black man's genitals to mock him and to know about, the myths or whatever. He also says he killed some Arab men and made sure they faced Mecca to further their humiliation. Humiliation, I couldn't get that word out. He makes a number of comments about homosexuals, among many other kinds of people. But it's hard not to get involved with him, since we are constantly living in his headspace. I'm not saying the movie makes him in any way likable, and it certainly doesn't present him as that, or even hint at you that you should feel that way. But you get a sort of Stockholm syndrome when you are on the same ride as he is. Particularly in the first shootout in the warehouse, you kind of root for him a little bit, despite the fact that he is the aggressor here. I credit them with both the ability to make this person tolerable, and to never venture into making him some cool in these scenes, as he is physically rather pathetic when not getting the drop on someone or shooting them, as we're shown quickly how beaten he is in the boxing training. And after that, they do try to elicit a little sympathy when Veronica and his mother are killed, but that didn't work for me, brother. Too little, too late, frankly. Benoit's truly disturbing character that, well, there wasn't enough in this movie, writing or quality-wise or anything, to make him a legendary sort of literary monster like a Judge Holden. But for what they were working with, it was a good effort. He also gets the most costume changes. He's a postman, he's a priest, he's wearing a lot of annoying turtlenecks. It added a whole flavor to his character that he could be these different people in his mind, I think. As far as the soundtrack goes, none really to speak of. They play some music in the background in pubs and cars, but it's incidental mostly, and I don't have anything to add to that. Overall, I consider this movie to be a step below Funny Games, whichever version you like, in terms of shocking or what have you. It's fairly dated, and its moral simplicity doesn't really have that much to say, but I think it's a well-done movie with what it had to work with, and I think it's clever enough that it's one of those movies you could say, oh yeah, I saw that, and have some vague opinion about it. It's a relic of its time and place, and I wouldn't mind seeing more films with this kind of raw strength, glaring weaknesses aside, the strength of the actual filming. So yeah, I don't think but one or two scenes would even cause your more experienced cinephile to bat an eye at, which I suppose is saying a lot, but give this one a watch if you want. Well, that was week 3 of mockumentaries with Man Bites Dog. If you were a serial killer, what would your gimmick be? Let me know down below. Also, come back next week when we finish up mockumentary month with Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Jesus, what a title. Don't forget to like, subscribe, add me on Instagram under DemonPeaks for Twin Peaks memes, of course. And don't forget, I'm the only demon who loves you. Thank you very much, and goodbye.